Our last speaker of the evening is none other than our National Secretary of the Maritime Union of Australia Division of the Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining and Energy Union, Paddy Crumlin. Thank
you. After 2 days here, there's a bit of deja vu in all of that. But it's the power of the truth, isn't it? That in the face of injustice, for a country that built its moral values, our political values, through the union movement, Albo said, the ALP's 130 years old this year. Well, next year the MUA is 150 years old. And there's no accident in that correlation, because it took unions, workers in this country 20 years to realise that they needed a potent political structure and vehicle to realise what they weren't getting against the gross exploitation colonialism then, where we were a trading nation that was dominated by international foreign interest and had a workforce that was completely exploited and far beyond the reach of Australian laws and regulations. So they formed unions, and through a whole process of agitation, 20 years later formed the Labor Party. So these are critically reminded things, and you say, has the world changed? No, the world hasn't changed, because shipping is still far beyond the reach of justice and regulation. And these guys and the crew and many other ships, you don't go from 100 to 10 and not have this example replicated over and over and over and over again, because Australians have a capacity to fight back against injustice and identify it, and got a great courage. That's why we're so well regarded around the world, because of our capacity to go out and frame our actions around our words and our values. And when this comes and you're presented with it in your own home, it's hard. I talked to Catherine yesterday, say, well, how do we get the narrative out there? If someone comes into your home in the middle of the night in your space and forcibly removes you in the most outrageous and illegal fashion by any measurement, and you are absolutely impotent to do anything about it, and we live in a society that not only allows it, but constructs it for no other reason than it can be done. And what that does to a human being in any situation of savagery, violation, bullying and harassment in a ship that was paid by the Australian taxpayer, where we took crews from the high 40s down to the smallest crews in the world, retrained a whole workforce under a bipartisanship, that this blue highway was essential to the economic, social, cultural and historical needs of our country, and never before at a more important. And we impressed on the workforce that if we didn't change and accept our social and economic and trade union responsibilities to cooperate in the transformation of our economy under a Labor government, then we would be failing as our responsibilities of Australians to other Australians. And they did it. And the reward was there in this Australian story. It's an Australian story, isn't it? And the reward is palpable and clear. That not only weren't they rewarded, they were violated on the basis of the essential nature of their job, the critical nature of the job. As I said the other day, when you face the West, they say, well, what's the narrative? Well, when you face the West, you're proud of the fact that we fought for a country and developed the type of democracy and a value and a morality that was inspiring in terms of its translation to the quality of our life, the quality of our regional countries' lives and the quality of international workers and social needs. We were proud of that. And we recognise that that comes with pain and suffering. And I call it the Anzac tradition. It doesn't matter what you call it. It is illustrative of what Australia is and believes in and the values of all of us. And yet when we turn to the West, we think about the 1 in 8 Australian seafarer, it was just another time, another critical time that demonstrated the essential nature of Australian trade, an island nation, the 4th largest user of ships in the world, on a supply chain to the rest of the world, that without it there is no future, there is no economic future, there is no wealth creation, there is no opportunity. And at the end of the day, you were removed and harassed and violated because of the essential nature of the work that you do. And an ideology that wants to control through an elite political and ideological position to control every element of the wealth creation within our society and be prepared to do anything. See, part of what Albo said, and part of what we're saying, well, what are we doing in the next election? We're reclaiming where we came from and reclaiming the vision and the determination to know where we're going. You know, to be able to be the punctuation that perhaps we need in our political journey here, to reclaim the history, and in reclaiming the history, reclaim the future. And when we were talking here over the last 2 days, to be able to present that in a way that is illustrative of what's going on in this country and around the world, with the polarisation of wealth, the polarisation of greed, the polarisation of fake news, the polarisation of the manipulation of our justice system, the criminality that's now been brought into our social and legal infrastructure, the inability to fight back against that fake news, and ultimately not being able to even tell the story for 3 years as you psychologically and emotionally and materially break down, as anyone does under a storm like that, and to remove a workforce that created as part of their journey, the part of their responsibilities of Australians, and do it without even being able to find your voice, and be denied that because the legal system is basically part of the conspiracy and part of the manipulation of the quality of life and the future of this country. Now that's worth fighting for. And thank you for coming, because you're in a room of true believers that believe those values, Australian values, are pervasive. And we're not saying or blaming the 30 Indian crews. I spoke to the Indians. They were conspired and bought in through customs, through migration, in the most illegal way, and were not told where they were going, had absolutely no idea that they were going. They are wage slaves in a slavish industry that registered ships in places like Liberia and Panama to escape scrutiny, to escape any responsibility to pay taxation, to escape any labour responsibility, to escape any transparency in ownership. So as they fail, there is then no remedy back to the people that own them. And when we talk about the G7 having a minimum taxation, and yet there is a whole industry that thrives on corruption and illegality and slavery, and then we say, what's the illustrative case? That's the illustrative case that the world cannot continue to survive with that integrated corruption, moral corruption, failure of values and denial of what we do here in Australia and our responsibilities of Australia to be able to engage with our moral responsibility, not only to our citizens, not only to the workers that come here, but to an international society and community that has never been faced with so many threats and challenges, and that don't have any role models, mentors, or ability for people to stand up to it in a coherent fashion. That's the coherent fashion. That's the next Labor government. That's the next future of Australia, to be able to see what's going on in this country and the world around us and not lose the empowerment, not to be violated, to recover from the violation and to have the courage and the determination to stand up and fucking well do something about it. That's what we're here for, and that's the inspiration. Thank you very much. To you, Michelle, the courage. Here to stay. Here to stay. Here to stay. Here to stay. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Abby, for the heart and the soul. Particularly, this is a story that will continue to resonate because it's based on truth and fact and a moral centre that we can't not lose that compass, as Ian referred to, without losing ourselves along the way. Thanks for you guys from the Portland, for the courage and determination to tell your story. For all of us, thank you for coming here to make sure that we do illustrate what's going on in this country and we do continue to inspire other people to do something about it. Let's go and have a few beers, eh?